and people were just going through the motions. It was no creativity, no creation, that was really present. It was just very automatic. And I told him afterwards, what do you really want? I mean, how would you like to be remembered as a manager? And he said, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to make people laugh. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. You want to make people laugh? You are the driest, least interesting, amusing kind of guy that I've met. I'm sorry to say. And I'm glad that I was able to give him this kind of unvarnished feedback, and he didn't throw me out of his office because I was hired as his coach. So he said, my dream is actually I would like to open a cabaret where I would tell war stories about corporate life in Germany. And he was the president of the German operation of a large oil and gas company, global company. And so I said, what if you didn't do this later in life? What if you actually did it now? What if you started making people laugh as we speak right now? And lo and behold, a few months later, I went to the Christmas party of the company, and several people came up to me and said, what did you do with this guy? He is the most amusing guy that I could imagine. I actually have fun working with him. He is really, really fun to be around. And that completely changed the behavior of everybody around him. People actually started to stay late, to work longer hours because they felt like they believed in the company, they believed in his leadership, they were loyal. Whereas before, the moment he left the office, everybody would basically leave. They would only stick around as long as he was around. So this is an example of what happens when you build self-awareness, when you really get that honest feedback, and when you start questioning your own blind spots, your own vicious circles, you could call them, your own value system, and actually create conscious values rather than the ones that you've inherited automatically. I almost forgot to give you a key tool that I consider one of the most powerful tools for building your self-awareness. So again, how do you get behind your own shadow and see yourself, what drives you through life? There are 3 elements that you have to get under your belt. The first element is you have to understand your own values. So what are your values that are important to you? What's important to you? Why is stuff important to you? That's number 1. Number 2, what is your culture? And that is, you might have a Swiss culture. I mean, if you're like me, I had a culture that is the Swiss culture. When I lived in India, I became painfully aware of my Swiss blind spots, my Swiss culture, my Swiss expectations, really, of quality, discretion, neutrality, reliability, punctuality. And I noticed that I could not take those for granted in India. That in India, they had another way of doing things, and that was just as valid. Okay, so being cognizant of your culture, whether it's a national culture, an organizational culture, that in your company things might happen in a certain way. It could even be a culture in your family, culture in your community that has become automatic. And then the third is, what are your blind spots? And those are the things that might have made sense at some point. They might have even gotten you to where you are today. They might be the success factors that have built the results that got you to this point now. But now they could be very counterproductive. So the very things that got you to this place, that made you successful, could now be a limitation or a constraint on your future. I just want to remind you of one story about Jill Barad, who was the former CEO of Mattel, the company that makes the Barbie dolls. And she was an inveterate marketer, and she was brilliant. I mean, she really made Barbie a global brand. And so then she was selected to be the CEO. But as a CEO, the very things, the very optimism that she used for marketing made her now over-optimistic and made her give very false projections and forecasts to the analysts and the investment community. And so 2 weeks after she said, we got no problems whatsoever, the stock was in a slump, and she was history. So that's what can happen if you are not clear on your blind spots. So what you want to do is you want to build each of these 3 things, and the The gold is obviously in the middle, right? So if you have built each of those three in a powerful way and you're really on top of your game, then you're in the golden center, and that's where the center of your leadership is. That's where all your strength comes from. So what happens, by the way, when you don't do that is a famous example about Rubbermaid, which is the orange juice company. Rubbermaid under Stanley Galt was a company that produced great results. In fact, they produced 3.6 times the market value of a company in the industry. However, the moment he left the company, because his style was very controlling, very top-down, very forceful leadership, the moment he left, the share price of the company immediately declined, the performance of the company went down, and it really flattened out. So what you want to do as a leader is you want to be very careful, because the old style that we talked about last time, which is the Machiavelli type of pyramid, where you have people that are basically leading by intimidation, by force, by being, how should I say, by being sometimes even cruel, actually, by incentivizing people by penalizing them or not penalizing them. This is the kind of old style of leadership, and that can produce results, but it's not sustainable. It's not. It doesn't actually generate the leadership of your people around you. It generates slaves that will be loyal soldiers, and that can go well for a while, but it certainly will not. It's not built to last. So what you want to do, if you want to build to last, if you want to have leadership that's sustainable, you're going to need to build this self-awareness and come from a ground of being that is built on trust, built on high self-awareness, built on questioning yourself rather than feeling like I have to know all the answers, I have to be the guy who's in charge, I have to be the guy who knows it all. Because in today's world, you can't. It's just impossible. No individual human being, no matter how brilliant they are, knows everything. So you've got to have the humility, as Lincoln did, to invite people who disagree with you into your cabinet. And Abraham Lincoln actually did that. He was an early example of real humility and real responsibility, and being willing and being magnanimous enough to let other great people play with him. And that created a greater team that was then much more sustainable. So that's really the self-awareness level. And so what I want to leave you with is some actions, some assignments, if I may. Assignment number 1, I would like you to fill out the self-assessment tool and really fill it out honestly, and don't try to be better than you are, but also don't try to be more critical than you are. Just take an honest look at yourself and rate yourself along those 5 levels of the pyramid. When you've done that, please share the self-assessment widely. Give it to everybody you know. Give it to your friends. Give it to your colleagues. Give it to your enemies, especially your enemies. They might have some very interesting insight into who you are. This will give you great feedback about how other people perceive you. Number 2, post comments again. Last time were great comments, so do it again. Post your observations. What did you learn when you went out into the action and you assessed yourself, or what did you see when other people assessed you or gave you feedback? What was surprising? What struck you? What was really something new that you didn't know before? And how can you use that? And number 3, I frankly don't remember number 3. Oh yes, number 3, I remember. Do something the opposite way, okay? So take one of those routine actions that you do all the time. If you always take the same way to work or the same vehicle to work, take a new vehicle or take a way to work that you've never done before. Learn something new. Maybe hang the toilet paper the other way around and see how that is, or sleep another direction. Just do things in a slightly new way. If you're somebody who talks a lot in meetings, maybe shut up and see how that feels like. If you're somebody who always shuts up, speak up and see how that feels like. So do things the opposite way. And please report also on that assignment in your post. What did you learn? What was your insight about doing things the opposite way? So thank you very much again for being in this community. It's a pleasure to talk with you. I look forward to hearing you, and goodbye.